welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Joshua Solomon, and with me, as always, is the Honorable J.P. Marzullo.
How you doing?
I'm warmer than I was 2 days ago.
Yeah, and now we have the extra seasons up here. You know, now we have mud season, and then we'll have black fly season. So
Yeah.
we're blessed that we have so many seasons.
Hopefully it stays warm and doesn't cool back down.
Yeah.
So
our guest has 2 titles, actually.
our guest has 100 titles.
But we're only going to use 2 tonight.
Well, I was going to try and use them all.
Go ahead, go. We have time.
Returning guest, Captain Lynn Blankenbecker, Esquire, RN, APN, what?
And she's also the Honorable.
Oh, the Honorable, I forgot the Honorable.
that.
The
Come on.
Honorable Captain
I know, isn't
Lynn
it great to be a woman?
Blankenbecker, Esquire, RN. How many? I need a cue card for the next time you show
they're
up.
just opportunities. But yeah, just opportunities. Woman born in the United States, I have a lot of opportunities. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming
Yeah,
back.
no, it's always fun.
So, you know, let's get right to it.
Okay.
What's going on at the Pentagon?
Oh my goodness.
And how has Elon Musk woken people up, or are they throwing things at him yet?
I don't think Elon has to go to the Pentagon because Pete's there now.
That's true.
I think
Yeah.
Pete's going to do
that's a good
do
point.
a good job of everything. I don't think the DOD is going to need.
They're going to look at it.
Going to need Doge. He might
But they will.
cooperate, but I don't think he's going to need it.
Well, I will tell you that, first of all, it's really been a breath of fresh air to have Secretary of Defense Hegseth at the helm. He did a town hall meeting for us about 3 weeks ago, I guess it's been now, and I loved it. The first thing he did was he only invited in the ranks of O5 and below, and E7 and below. So
Wow.
those senior ranking people, he didn't invite to the room. The senior
So folks could feel free to.
exactly non-attributional. Gave a big question and answer opportunity afterwards. There were people in uniform.
But wait a minute. You fall outside. Well, you're a civilian now.
I'm a
but
civilian.
Yeah.
You would have fallen.
I would have fallen outside. That's okay. They live streamed it for us so we could see his message, and I was happy with that. Boy, what an inspirational message. He came right out the gate. You know what I loved about him was he was just wearing a shirt, you know, like a button down, no jacket, no tie, none of the formality, and you know, some nice dress slacks. He came out. They had an invocation. We had the national anthem sang the way it was written. You know, I have real issue with that, right? You know, I
do
can't
too.
stand the license that artists take with the.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it's the equivalent of taking the stars and stripes and mixing them all up and still trying to call it the American flag.
Yeah,
it's written one way. It needs to be sung and played one way.
That's
period.
why we mute the guy that sings for the Bruins.
Oh, okay.
Because he goes through all kinds of contortions.
But he's not as no. I think he does a good job. I don't think he's offensive like the folks that sing at football games and.
But I still think he's horrible. But anyway, let's move on.
Oh, so then he came right out.
We'll
and he
settle that right there.
And then he just said, "I'm going to address what everybody's, you know, been on everybody's mind right now, and that is why we've gotten rid of DEIA."
Yeah.
And he said, DEIA is divisive. He said, when you divide up your group of people by color, by gender or sex as they call it, and by national origin and by religion and by whatever else you want to divide people up, you have now divided your team. We are going to be unified. And we embrace everybody who puts a uniform on, who wants to put a uniform on and serve this nation. And we're not going to look at you based on your silo. We're going to look at you based on your merit. What do you bring to the table? We want the person to the right of you and the left of you to know how to do their job, and that's it. And his message was so unifying. It was the first time I'd ever heard somebody truly articulate in a way that he did how divisive DEIA really is. And
and it has been. I mean, it's a message that we as conservatives have been trying to put out there for a while, right? And it's, like you said, it's refreshing that we've got it from the top down now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so he was very transparent. I love that. And, you know, that's what I loved about President Trump when he was our president. And I don't know if I've had this conversation. I think I probably have on this very, you know, in this very forum. But when President Trump, I've served under every president since Ronald Reagan. And every president since Ronald Reagan, I served in the military 36 and a half years.
Wow.
Yeah, you were pretty happy and expressive in the Trump years, but when the Biden years came along, you kind of clammed up a little bit on the show.
Well, you know, first of all,
Well, because as
He's your president. I mean,
yes, you can't.
commanding officer.
Right,
and
there are
as when you're in
certain things
uniform,
yeah.
we are bound by
law.
law and by instructions that we cannot say disparaging remarks about the President of the United States. And you know, to be honest, I've always just wanted my nation to succeed. So whoever America picks as our president, it doesn't do any good to badmouth him, right? You just really need to figure out a way to help our country succeed, even if it's in spite of whoever's at the helm, right? You still have to march on and make sure the mission happens. And so for me, I probably just didn't have anything great, you know, outstanding to say about him. But under President Trump, you know, there was a period of time, I don't know if you remember, he executed these 3 missions back to back, and they were in the fall. And the first one was he went into Syria. He went into Syria, and then, or sorry, he went into Turkey first. He went into Turkey, and everybody was asking me. I was running for Congress at that time. They were like, "How can you support President Trump? He's got Syrian blood on his hands. He's not helping the Syrians." And I was like, "He's got a plan. You just got to let President Trump's plan happen." And sure enough, he had to go into Turkey to secure the airspace so we could get into Syria and hit our target. But those 3 missions, I don't know if you remember, he got on TV as soon as they happened. Nobody knew they were going to happen, except for the people executing them. And then he got on TV from the Situation Room and he said, "Okay, this is what we did tonight. We hit our target. No American lives lost. Our pilot came home, or our principal came home, and all our equipment came back intact. And we have now taken out our target. No civilian lives lost. Here we are." Right. And now here's what we're going to do with this.
We're not going to drag this out longer than it needs to drag out.
And so I thought he was masterful in the way he could execute a military mission. You know, because he wasn't a career military officer, right? And that was, folks, you know, have said to me, "Well, I don't know how you can support Secretary Hegseth. He wasn't a general." And I'm like, I don't want a general to be
Exactly.
It's supposed to be a civilian post to begin with, right?
I was like, go get a civics lesson.
The fact that people appointed to the post have a military background is a plus, but if we've gone over the last several decades, we've kind of gone down this route where it's ingrained in Congress's mind that you have to be a general or better in order to be qualified for it, and that's just not the case.
No.
And we saw that during his confirmation hearing, where he said, "Well, Senator, I'm not a general."
Right. And we want that, right? That's that balance of power. And our government was, you know, when our founding fathers developed our government, they wanted civilian counterparts so that it was never completely, you know, controlled by our military, and we didn't become a military state. And so he's done a tremendous job. I think he's, you know, the other thing that he did, which I thought was really great, was, and I'm pretty sure every Secretary of Defense has done this, but can't speak 100% sure, but he asked for everything that Secretary Austin had tried to slip in the last 90 days get passed.
Oh, wow.
And he pulled those back to review them. And one of those is one of my policies. So one of them is the Department of Defense implementation plan for the Women, Peace, and Security program. And since May, when I was at the Pentagon, I have literally hammered those working groups and told them to take the DEIA out of it. But Secretary Austin was very committed to women in combat. He was very committed to DEIA to the extreme, and therefore he tried to use the Women, Peace, and Security program, and I know we talked about that the last time I was on, as a DEIA program.
I did ask those questions, and again, the last time you were on, we had a different commander-in-chief, and you had a different Secretary of Defense. And so you didn't give a whole bunch of details about.
No, so they tried to shove DEIA in, and they were successful in getting too much what I thought was DEIA language. So Navy, I worked for the Navy, so on behalf of the Navy, I got a chance to either concur or non-concur when they were trying to set that through, and I would always non-concur, which kind of held it up so it wouldn't get through until we could get it fixed so that it was separate. There's nothing, You know, if Secretary Austin wanted DEIA there was a DEIA program. We had entire offices with hundreds, if not thousands, of people hired and employed to do nothing but deal with DEIA. But that wasn't what Women, Peace, and Security was about. That's a whole different thing. And so I just kept telling everybody, let's just, you know, look at the law that President Trump signed into law in 2017, which is the Women, Peace, and Security Act. So we know President Trump supports that. And, by the way, our new National Security Advisor, Representative Mike Waltz, past Representative Michael Waltz, started and led the Women, Peace, and Security Caucus in Congress. So you know they both agree with the principles behind Women, Peace, and Security, which is nothing more, as you may recall, than just the meaningful participation of women, by women, in planning processes and in recovery efforts during times of conflict or crisis. You don't have to be in a uniform. It's just making sure that women and children's
and their needs
are addressed,
are dealt with
and
in the aftermath of an issue.
Exactly, which has nothing to do with DEIA.
Right.
That has nothing to do with that. So I fought that battle. I lost that battle, and sure enough, New Year's Eve, what do you think hits my inbox?
And that's exactly what I was worried about, because the name of it contains women.
Yeah.
I was really thinking, okay, that's going to be hijacked.
Well, only because, keep in mind, President Trump signed it into law. And keep in mind that Representative Michael Waltz supported it. They know what Women, Peace, and Security is about. I never worried it was going to be in jeopardy until SecDef Austin shoved all this garbage in there that turned it into a DEIA. So, so yes, on New Year's Eve, I open my email, and what do I get? Oh, from OSD, the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Keeping in mind, this is still SecDef Austin. Look what we passed.
Get it shoved through.
On New Year's Eve. Passed it through. So then...
Always on a weekend or a holiday to avoid the news cycle.
Right. So that comes in, and so I knew, I mean, instantly, as soon, I was like, you can look at page 2, where it connected it to DEIA. And I was like, this is never going to make it through the next administration. It's going to get at least looked at with a microscope. And my fear was... kind of, I don't know, that anybody who was connected to it might end up going home as well. Because there are some really tremendous people.
On the other hand, you said that you voted against it.
But nobody's. The Pentagon is 22,000 people.
Well, I understand that, but at least you're on record as having said, I wasn't on board with these pieces they tried to shove into it.
I know. But, you know, there's 22,000 people, and Secretary Hegseth can definitely not go through and go, oh, Lynn stays, because in this little box over here, she said take that out, right? Like, or Lynn non-concurred. Like, it isn't going to happen that way. But my job was to do the best I could to protect my boss, who is the Chief of Naval Operations, and that was Admiral Franchetti. And as I'm sure all of you have heard, she was relieved on Friday, last Friday.
I saw that.
And so, as the first female in the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Franchetti, prior to me getting to the Pentagon, was always asked to talk about her service and how she made it, you know. And to be the CNO, you have to have been in command of a combat ship, and there's certain sort of milestones.
Right.
And so I am not certain, I can't speak to why that decision was made, but you know, there were probably some connections there. I did see when the lists came out from some of the organizations that were going to be making recommendations to Secretary Hegseth that Admiral Franchetti was always on there. And so I worked very hard in my time at the Pentagon when she was there to make sure that I did not, the program that I was in charge of, Women, Peace, and Security, didn't get her into DEIA trouble.
Right.
You know, that was my goal. And that's one of the reasons why I would always non-concur, was, you know, to kind of help with that. Yeah. Well, you know, I hadn't worked with her long enough to know if there were any skeletons. All I know was that DEIA had no place in Women, Peace, and Security.
Right.
And I was going to do my job and make sure that I didn't put it in there.
Well, as far as the slashing of the general officers, the admirals and generals, I read recently, Hegseth tweeted it out or X'd it out. I don't know what you
X, it was
X'd it
on
out.
X. Formerly,
You know, he
Twitter.
mentioned, he said the United States got through World War II, the entirety of World War II, and we only had 7 4-star generals. Right? The armed forces only had 7 4-star generals, and we got through World War II. Now, right now, there are 44 4-star officers.
Oh, that doesn't include all the SESs that are equivalent.
Right, and so you know, I think he's on the Doge kick there. It's like, do we really need this many politically appointed 4-star officers?
Several years.
And so you know, he started cutting them, right? So I'm wondering if, I don't think all the cuts are strictly going to be DEI cuts. I don't think all the cuts are going to be strictly. I think we're looking at downsizing.
And you know,
I don't think it's going to be a personality thing. I don't think it's going to be a performance thing. I think there's just going to be
fewer
going to be some
Right,
fewer
right.
numbers.
Yeah, and you know,
unfortunately, some people are going to get cut.
Yeah, and you know what, and I hate to say it, but there's a lot of redundancy, you know, at the Pentagon. And I can't speak for other agencies, but the Pentagon where I work, there's a lot of redundancies. There's a lot of people doing the same job. It has been very frustrating. You know, I was at the Pentagon from 2012 to 2015. That was my last tour there. And everybody came to work, and we had in-person meetings, and everything was fine. Then we had COVID, and nobody came to work anymore.
Right.
And it's been very frustrating since I've been there since May, trying to get any work done because nobody comes to work. And you call them, and they're not there. You know, and then 2 hours later they call you back, and the kids screaming in the background, the dog's barking, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm having a toddler meltdown."
That
Can I call?
absolutely shouldn't exist in the DoD.
I was on the bus the other day because I take the bus to work, and there were these 3 women, and this woman said, "Well, I never would have had a baby if I knew they were going to make me go back to work."
Oh, jeez.
I was like, what? What? Like, did you think you were going to get paid as a, call yourself a GS, 12, 13, 14? You know, you're making 6 figures, and you're staying home and taking care of your baby?
Wow.
Like, what? Like, yeah. And so when you have that kind of mentality, and I'm not saying everybody feels that way, but
Right.
that was a conversation with 3 women on a bus.
No, like I said, as someone who works from home and worked from home before COVID, I enjoy working from home. I don't enjoy working from the office, but if I had to, I would, first off. And second off, if I was in a mission critical field, such as the Department of Defense, if somebody asked me to come to work, I'd come to work.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
how many of these people who are quote unquote working from home are working from home with security clearances? Meaning you've got to go into a skiff to review this
Right,
stuff,
or
right?
have a secure
like
connection and-
what's going on,
Right,
right?
right,
Why-
right.
These people should not be working from home.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I agree because of the frustration that I had. And, you know, departments are, you know, there's a lot of people to do a lot of work, to do a little work. And, you know, just in the last, like, I'm the Women, Peace and Security Program Manager and Policy Advisor for the Navy. And we only need one. But then the Secretary of the Navy's office decided that they were going to, before they wanted to get one, so they stood up a GS job. And then ASNMNRA, the Assistant Secretary for Manpower and Reserve Affairs,
So
they
every
wanted one.
agency and every department needs an employee for every program. That's what it sounds like.
And so I literally had a meeting with my 1-star admiral, oh gosh, when was it? Like December 6th, maybe? And you have to write. You can't just walk in and talk to your admiral. You have to write a memo that explains, like an information memo or a decision memo or whatever, and you give it to them as a read ahead, and then you discuss it when you're there, right? So I sent him this info memo, and I said, "Sir, like ASNMRA and SecNav's office are now trying to stand up my job there. Like, do you want to address this with your leadership? Because number one, we don't need 3. There isn't enough work for 3 people. And number 2, wherever you want to put that's fine. And if you want me to compete for the one position, but have you talked to ASNMNRA and have you talked to SecNavs? Has anybody communicated? Like, are you guys not talking to each other over here?
There's a lot of people not talking to each other.
Well, and that's the thing is that, you know, there's a lot going on in the world, and I think that, you know, certain things just programs grow with.
Well, programs do grow, and with growth, there may be opportunities for more, you know, positions that open up.
Well, they grow without commitment. I can understand.
But they don't just explode.
Yeah, and
they grow slowly.
40 years ago, 30 years ago, when we didn't have internet, and we didn't have Teams, and we didn't have electronic communications, I'd get it, because you have to get out of your seat and walk over to another office and have a conversation and say, hey, you know, what should we do? We're thinking about, right? But today you can send an email to somebody or pick up the phone. Like, did anybody not?
It's instant communication.
And it wasn't a surprise. SecNav's office knew about me. Like, I was always in SecNav's office. They actually asked me to edit the Secretary of the Navy Del Toro's comments at the Women, Peace, and Security Symposium. They knew I existed. Yeah. So it was just.
You're still there?
Well, that brings us to the story of the hour.
Okay.
So several weeks ago, that fork in the road message came out. Everybody familiar with the fork in the road? Elon Musk sent a message: make a decision. You can do a deferred resignation or whatever.
Oh, I got you.
And that was the deadline. I think for that was like February 7th.
It's like an 8-month, right?
Yeah. So that was like for February 7th. So on February 6th, which I think that was it was a Wednesday, Thursday, so whatever, 6, 7, 5, 6, whatever. On the Wednesday, President Trump wrote an executive order stating if you have any policies, position descriptions, or whatever that have reference to or are all about gender identity or gender ideology, then I need to know about them.
Right. Nope, I remember that one. Yep.
So my office, I work in security cooperation. I work in N5, which is security cooperation. So my office got the message. So, of course, I'm the only person that has, most of them are FAOs, foreign area officers. Their job descriptions and policies have nothing to do with gender identity. But because I work in women, peace, and security, there was some belief that maybe I was tied to that. So they came to me and asked me to review my job description. And I looked at my job description, and there were 25 places in my job description that used the word gender. And that was a word they wanted us to take out, was gender. And President Trump had suggested the word sex or something, you know, but not gender. So I went through and I edited it, and I said, hey, look, I said, you know, there's a lot of times.
But even if you had gender in it, it wouldn't. It's not tied to DEI.
No, it wasn't tied to DEI, and it wasn't.
But the word was in there, and
correct.
It raises the flag.
It was like a trigger, and there was no gender. And I even wrote a memo that said nothing in my job description has anything to do with gender ideology or gender identity. Right. But I said there are these 25 instances in the world of women, peace, and security. There are terms of art that are known globally, like I am a gender advisor. We have gender focal points. We do a gender analysis. So we use those terms of art, and everybody across the world knows what we're partners and allies.
Isn't it horrible that the whole ideology, whether it's the DEI thing from Democrats or some other issue from Democrats, they end up changing our language and forcing us to change the meaning of words that we use and need to use. And because the phrase gender ideology comes out, now all of a sudden you can't use it in a manner that you're supposed to be using it.
So I went through and I changed everywhere where it said gender to women, peace, and security. So women, peace, and security advisor, women, peace, and security analysis, blah, blah, blah. You get the picture. And I sent it over to HR. HR then sends me back the edited version. And everywhere that I put gender, women, peace, and security,
they changed it
to sex. So I became the sex advisor to the United States Navy, and my job was to manage the Navy's sex network. So
Did you accept that new position?
Okay. So, as I suspected, are y'all laughing too? Yeah. As I suspected, everybody started laughing, right? My leadership started laughing, and initially I was like, ha ha, funny. And then I got to thinking about this, and I was like, okay, I'm the sex advisor to the United States Navy. Is that a verb or a noun? Like, what? Like, and then I got to thinking about it, and the more I thought about it, the more offensive it was becoming to me. And I'm not an easily offended person, but I was like,
Yeah, that's
did somebody not read this out loud? So I went to my leadership and I said, can you please read this out loud? Like, does this sound as ridiculous as it feels to me? And so my leadership laughed, and they, kind of patted me and said, don't worry, this will blow over. We'll fix it later. And I said, no, I really am not comfortable
That's
with
not
that.
the title I want to put
No,
at the bottom of my email.
Or my resume, or my business cards. So my daughter, she's like probably my best friend, and she's 32, and she's also an attorney. So I go out of my office down to the front of the Pentagon where I can use my phone, and I called my daughter my cell phone, and I was like, hey, what do you make of this? And so my daughter's first words were, what the actual beep? and then she said, Mom, definitely put it in your resume. She said, you will be guaranteed an interview anywhere you go. People are probably not going to even look at your skill set. They're probably just going to
I want to know what this lady
is this?
does for a living.
What is she doing at the Pentagon that she is the sex advisor?
No.
So anyway, so the more I thought about it, the more angry I got. Yeah. And so I went upstairs and I, said, look, I can't live with this. This is a bridge too far. Like, I've put up with a lot of drama in 36 and a half years in the military, but this is a bridge too far. And I was like, please, let's go fix it. So we went to HR, and this is what HR told us. We are leaving it because this is part of our malicious compliance.
What?
Oh, so you need to go.
Malicious compliance. So that was like neener. We hate you, President Trump, so we're going to just stick it to you. And you're stuck with this now. You deal with Lynn's hurt feelings and emotions. We're not going to have to deal with this. So I said to them, you are human resources, right? You take care of the humans. I am a human. You have just labeled me with a giant scarlet A to walk around this Pentagon with. And I called my counterparts in the Army, and nobody else was doing this malicious compliance. So they gave me a lot of pushback. So I came back to my office, opened the fork in the road, and hit resign. I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this. I can't do this. So I resigned.
Oh, that's too bad.
And
It's really too bad because.
By the way, they did change it then.
After you
Okay.
resigned.
But once you resign, right?
Yeah.
So now I am in the pool of the 65,000 people who
Looking for a job.
who will be leaving the Pentagon. So, but it was, I guess.
shame.
The reason I tell you that is because that level of ridiculousness.
Okay,
that
but these malicious compliance people, they are the ones who need to go.
Yep. And hopefully SecDef will be able to root them out, and hopefully Elon Musk will be able to root them out. This is the kind of stuff they're trying to get rid of. This is the kind of behavior at the Pentagon, this, malicious,
I remember
immature.
the first time I ever heard about this type of behavior was when Al Gore, the inventor of the internet, lost to George Bush. And that was the first time that I had ever heard about this malicious behavior in the turnover of administrations. And it was sophomoric, it was childish, but every computer in the White House office building that's right across the street, every computer's keyboard, the W was ripped out and missing. Like they vandalized George W. Bush. So they vandalized the office, and so there were more instances of that. But they just kind of went scorched earth on it. And the other thing was that the Clintons cleared the White House out of all the furniture. Right, because the incoming first family can order furniture and decorate. The first lady can decorate here and there and there. But that furniture belongs to the taxpayers and gets stored away. And if a future admin or a future first lady wants to use
That
the
furniture.
dinette set that Jacqueline Kennedy used, right, then they can pull that out and do that. But the Clintons took it all. Millions of dollars worth of furniture. So, I mean, they just went scorched earth on it. And that was the first time I'd heard it, and it was all childish pranks. But now we're getting to the point where it's affecting people's careers.
Well, and for me,
This is not acceptable.
My personal feeling is that when you have a program that, and I did go to over to the Undersecretary for OSD, for the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and I went over there and just said, hey, look, I want to advocate for this program. I didn't tell anybody, anything that what had happened or whatever. I said, I really want to advocate for women, peace, and security. I do think it's good for, our country. I think it's good for the world. It will be a piece, it is a piece of, peace promoting policy within our country, and we definitely need it, right? But I said, as it's written, it does need this. There's a lot of stuff, and I can show you all the places where it needs to come out. And the poor man there, he's like, will you come work for us over at OSD? And I said, no, I think I've had enough for now. I'm all good for right now. But thank you for the invitation to come over to the Office of the Secretary of Defense, because that's where the whole drama started in the first place. It was Secretary of Defense office that put all that stuff in there that shouldn't have been in the first place. And if they would have just used the law and the UN resolution, we would have been fine.
Right.
So anyway, it was it's a comical story. It's definitely a sea story I will carry with me.
It is a sea story.
Yeah. Being labeled a sex advisor. Oh, and the better part of the story is, so then while I was down talking to my daughter, I was sitting down in that, that kind of lobby area where everybody goes to collect, get their phones, because that's where there's the only place there's internet. And I'm sitting there, and this is all happening at the same time, right? And this very young man walks up to me, and he's like, I used to see you sitting on the bench outside, and I just wanted to come over and talk to you. And I was like, so.
He must have saw your title somewhere.
So I was like, what? Like, do I have
Oh,
this
no.
invisible scarlet A that every eligible man in the
That's
Pentagon?
the sex lady.
Right? So, this is all unfolding within 30 minutes. And so I said to him, I finally said, okay, I might be reading this all wrong, but I feel like you're wanting to ask me to maybe have dinner or go out or something. He said, yes. And so I
said yes.
I said, how old are you? In my brain, I was like, was I stationed with him somewhere? Was he one of my corpsmen? Did I babysit him somewhere? No, seriously, I had no idea who this guy was or where he came from. He goes, I'm 39. I was like, man, that sex advisor thing has already scored me a date with.
It's paying off.
I am now the cougar of the Pentagon. So I said to him, I said, how old do you think I am? And the young man was like, oh, I know better than to try to guess. I said, well, I can guarantee you I'm older than your mother. And I said, I am 61. And he goes, oh, really? I never would have guessed it. Jesus, seriously, as soon as they label you that,
That's it.
Yeah,
Nice.
It was shocking.
So let me ask you something. If you wanted to stay, go
ahead.
Do we break here? If you wanted to stay but work for a different division or different group, could you do that?
I could. I could reapply.
Yeah.
But right now they're doing a hiring freeze. So they were really trying to, I feel like that afterwards when I really soul searched it and thought about it, I thought, I did free up a spot for somebody who may really need their job. For me,
They might like the title.
Right, maybe that title too. But for me, I have a home in New Hampshire that's paid for. I have cars in New Hampshire. My family's in New Hampshire. I have a military retirement. I can feed myself.
Right.
So, but there may be a young family in D.C. who have young children or children going to college who have a big mortgage on a house, and to lose your job would be very hard, right?
Yeah.
Because, you can't just up and move out of D.C. I can go anywhere.
Right.
But they have a home in D.C. that they have to live in, right? And so if it freed up a space for somebody else to keep their job, then that was probably good too, so.
You've been with the DOD a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So One of the things that I saw in the last week that made no sense to me. And I'm gonna,
one?
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask you a question. Just because I have you, you're a veteran, and you're also a current and soon-to-be former employee of the DoD. All right, so in the 36 years in the Navy, 36, am I right?
Half.
36
Yes.
years in the Navy, and however many years, how many federal credit cards were you issued?
Oh my goodness. Well, I got one, but I mean, it was the government travel card. And,
Right.
Yeah.
So you got one.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So as a DoD employee,
Yeah. Because we're mandated to get
Okay.
it. I wouldn't
As
take
a-
it otherwise.
as active duty.
Yes.
All right. So you had one.
Well, it was a government credit card that we could only use for our travel.
Okay.
So it wasn't like we could spend the DoD's money
So
on.
do you get a government credit card when you were in boot camp or OCS?
Maybe they do. I don't know.
Do you get it? Do you get it when you're enlisted or when you're active duty? Does
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
active duty?
Yes.
Regardless of rank.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it still didn't make any sense to me. There are 4.7 million active credit cards on the federal rolls. 2.4 million of those credit cards belong to the Department of Defense.
That tracks. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't track with me because in 2024, there were only 1.3 million active duty, and there's only 700,000 DoD civilian employees, and that only comes up to 2 million.
Oh, well, I don't know how many. Yeah, I mean, knowing that there's roughly a million plus people in the active duty, and I don't know how many civilians there are. It wouldn't. I mean,
I just saw the number. I'm like, that's a lot.
maybe
So-
some people got extra. I
So
don't
is
know.
it so that's the question? Is so everybody in the service gets a credit card, gets a travel card?
One government travel card with a $7,500 limit.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
one.
See, I wasn't
we're-
aware of that.
Yes.
My father was 20 years in the Navy and never once.
No, well, they didn't. That was a new thing they started. They force us to get it. This is the real racket. They force us to get it in our name. We apply for the credit card. It goes on our credit score, and you are required to pay that off when you travel. You're only allowed to use it for airline tickets, hotels, rental cars related to travel that is official government travel. So I'm going to a course that the Navy wants to send me to.
So they reimburse you.
They reimburse
But slowly.
you. So if they don't reimburse you within the 30 days,
Yep.
You
you
still
are
have to pay
liable
for
for
it.
paying that off
Yep.
until your travel claim is paid.
But the fact is,
Yeah.
the DoD does have 2.4 million credit cards out there.
If they do, then, and there's 2.4
Okay,
people.
well, that at least helps me understand the numbers better.
Yeah.
So when did that start happening? Like when did they start issuing those? Because again,
I think I-
come from a military family who has never had one.
I want to say probably around 2010.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
I've always, anytime I've traveled, every time I've deployed, did I use it in 2003, 5, 7? I'm 100% certain I used it when I went to Afghanistan. That was 2011. And sometime before that, but
Okay.
yeah.
so there is a cap on it. So it's
There
not like
is,
this
yeah.
unlimited federal
No,
credit
no.
card cap.
And you have to pay it off every 30 days.
Okay, so it makes the DoD number, because the DoD number of credit cards is more than half of the entire set of credit cards for the entire federal,
Yeah.
all agencies
Okay,
combined,
yeah.
right? Like I said, it was 4.7 million credit cards, open active credit cards for the federal government, and that was one of the things that Dozier's looking into. Is like, why do all these people have a credit card? And I saw the DoD numbers, and I'm like, well, that number does not add up to active duty plus DoD civilian employees.
The really
So I
interesting
guess-
thing, though, is that credit card is issued to me. I had to apply for it. It is in my name. I am responsible for the bill. It affects my credit score. So how is the government claiming ownership of
I
that?
pulled a spreadsheet from U.S. Digital Services that has a spreadsheet and has a breakdown of all the credit cards and the number of transactions per credit card and the amount. And it's something like $90 million last year for all of federal agencies. But the Department of Defense is by far the largest, and they are $40 million. So
Yeah, I could
but,
see.
But they have this list of credit cards. So so is your credit card not on the on a list for the
Maybe
feds?
it is. I mean, they track
What
it,
if
right?
you didn't? What if you didn't qualify for the credit card?
As
you
a
said-
military person, you automatically qualify.
Okay.
Because in the military, if you have really bad credit, you lose your security clearance, and then you can't be in the military anyway, so you can't do your job.
Yeah.
So I think they, you know, I don't know about the sailors or the airmen or the Marines or whatever, soldiers who file bankruptcy. I'm sure there's some sort of action. And if they take away your government travel card from you, you can't travel at all on the government. You can't.
Okay.
You can't go
well, that,
to school
again, that
or
makes more sense to me now.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
said,
yeah.
I come from a military family where nobody was issued a credit card.
No, we are-
But now, so that
we all have
that helps me understand that number. I'm glad I
hate
asked.
having it.
You hate that.
Well, I do, because I'm really good about paying off my credit card on time, and my credit score is great, and I don't want this thing affecting my credit score.
Right. Well, then
So-
travel on your own card then.
Oh, we're
Just
not
leave
allowed.
that one alone.
No, nay, nay.
Whoa.
They will not reimburse you. There are certain things that you have to.
Really?
Yeah, you have to go into this thing called the Defense Travel System. It's called DTS, and we go in there, and that's where we book our flights, our rental cars, our hotels, and all of those things must be booked and reimbursed on your government travel card. So the only thing that I can use my civilian card for is dining, but they don't reimburse you for that. They give you a per diem.
Right.
Tolls, I can use it for tolls. Gas sometimes, but not really. You know, it really depends on where you are. Like if your credit card isn't accepted at a gas or whatever. But no. Usually, so when you do your travel claim, you have all your stuff that's government reimbursement, and then your per diem is just onto your civilian account.
So you have a system where you're booking flights, renting cars, and hotels and everything like that. Do you ever compare those prices to, say?
Oh yeah, and let me tell you something. It is the cheapest possible, and that is a no lie
So you're
story.
not paying extra through that credit?
No, the
because
only thing-
when my credit card says, "Hey, go book through our site," it's way more expensive than if I just do it myself.
No. So they have this system called SATO, and they have government contracted fares. So
And that's where I was getting at.
Yeah.
These government contracted things, are they inflated or are they reduced?
No, but you get really good protection. I have to say, when you book your flight through DTS, if your flight is canceled or the government cancels, you get all your money back. So
Okay.
it's not like me. When I fly home, I was geobaching from the Pentagon here. When I would fly home on the weekends, I'd go buy that really cheap seat, you know, the one where I pretty much like sat on the bathroom toilet all the way in. And those were like totally not refundable. You got nothing. You didn't even
Yeah.
get a bag of peanuts. You got like literally nothing. It was like,
Could
yeah.
you go take your regular credit card and upgrade yourself?
No. And it doesn't work that way. Like I cannot take out that government card and use it to purchase something. So say my luggage doesn't show up. And I get to name my place where I'm going on official business and my luggage doesn't show up. If I have a charge at the exchange, if it's for a toothbrush and stuff like that, that's probably okay. If I have like an outfit or a pair of Jordanaires,
Or a uniform that I need for tomorrow morning?
Nay. Now, uniforms, toothbrushes, they'll give you some latitude there, but you better be showing a receipt that says toothbrush and uniform. It better not be showing Jordanaires or any of that stuff, or you are going to get in a boatload of trouble.
That was the other thing. Based on the number of transactions and the amount of money spent, every time a federal credit card is swiped, it's an average of $450. I got curious and started playing with the numbers.
Well, that makes sense because a lot of our schools will be 30 or 45 days long, and so if you're an active duty member and you're going to a school that's 30 days long, think about it. I mean, if your hotel is $50 a night at 30 nights, you've got a pretty big bill, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
All right. You answered a question, and I don't have to complain about the waste there. It sounds like it's kind of normal. So,
Yeah.
good explanation for that one.
Yeah. So what else is what's been going on here?
Oh,
Well, we
you
took
said-
over both houses.
yeah,
And I mean, yeah.
governors, and we did pretty well.
Yeah, yeah,
except
yeah.
for
Yeah.
the congressional seats,
Which we cannot seem to win
Nope.
for some reason.
Nope.
Speaking of which,
Mm-hmm.
now that you're unencumbered, the next session there's going to be an open Senate spot.
Yeah, I heard that there's already somebody that is interested. So I've already reached out to that individual to see,
Phil Taub.
is he going to run?
He's interested.
Is he? I got to go have a conversation with
Yes,
him.
you do.
Yes, I do.
And
No, this was
Shaheen
a
is
different-
clowning herself in the news the last
Oh,
few
yeah.
days, so that's good for our side.
Oh my goodness gracious! Well, she's ever since she sponsored Senate Bill 777, I have never been a fan of hers. So yeah, she's
Which bill was that?
That was a bill that would compel the military to do abortions.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah,
Yep.
and but her testimony I thought was a little offensive. Suggesting that we get ourselves downrange and find ourselves as women pregnant. I don't like. I don't go downrange to get pregnant. I go downrange to do a mission. And I understand, the thought process in that we don't want our young girls or we don't want women, anybody in the military going.
This just underscores the whole women in combat business, right?
Oh, we should have a conversation about women in
I mean,
combat.
it's not misogynistic. There's some practicalities here, right? A 120-pound woman is not going to be able to drag her 350-pound counterpart out of a location, right? I mean, there are certain limitations to a woman's bone structure and her muscle density that's going to opt her out of certain special forces type roles. I mean, there are going to be places where women are not going to perform as well as men in certain combat roles.
Well, first of all, I think that there are very capable women out there. There are
and I'm
women,
not saying that there aren't.
And there are
There's
very
going to be
capable
exceptions
women.
to
Yeah.
every rule. There absolutely are.
I think that that there are we are already seeing women in combat situations. I was a combat nurse in a combat hospital caring for combat casualties, but I wasn't a combatant, right?
Right,
And
but
there's
there were
different-
combatants. I mean, even in the first Gulf War, we had the first woman across the border. The first helicopter across the border was piloted by a woman, right?
Well,
and we had women POWs. But what I'm saying is that when you're using the women in combat as an excuse to force the military to pay for abortions, because you're basically putting a blanket out there and saying that every woman in the military is at risk of getting pregnant and is going to be sleeping around and you know,
I found
it's
that piece.
It's that blanket assertion about women in the military is what's offensive.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And for me, the women in combat. This is the Women, Peace, and Security part of Lynn coming out. Women, Peace, and Security, we do a gender analysis. We go in and we look at whatever the situation is, and we look at the men and women, boys and girls. We look at all populations to see what the relief efforts, the recovery efforts, whatever, how that is going to impact them, right? So that's what we do. My experience, having been a nurse over in Afghanistan in 2011 and 2012, I'll give you two experiences, and then I'll tell you why I don't think women belong in combat. And it has nothing to do with women, it has everything to do with men. That we had a female engagement team.
I'm not going to disagree with you, I guarantee it.
We had a female engagement team that went out, and it was a late night mission. Those female engagement teams are really good, and a good use of women out there because they would, they would try build a bond with the Afghan women, and the Afghan women were raising the little boys who were being radicalized.
Right.
And so when those women trusted our female engagement teams, they were information sharing and telling these women how to break that cycle of getting their kids radicalized and turned into terrorists, right? And so it was working for us. It happened late in the game, but it was a good, effective use of women to be able to, again, gender analysis, where we figure out how we can get information like that. So it was good. It was a good intel thing. However, this one night, this team went out, they stepped on a daisy chain, and all 10 women were injured. And one of them was killed. And she came back to our hospital. And keep in mind, I have been a combat nurse since Desert Storm. So that's a long time. While we were treating this patient, her commanding officer was a lieutenant colonel, male. He was screaming at us at the top of his lungs. You're not doing enough. You have to save her. She's a young wife. How am I supposed to call her husband?
Oh, wow.
I have never seen that reaction out of a commanding officer or a man for the literally thousands of male soldiers I cared for. And it said to me, my biggest regret in that whole event,
there was a difference. Someone was being treated differently because of their gender.
Well, and he couldn't handle it.
Right.
And my biggest regret of that night was not following him out. I don't even know if that man went home and killed himself over the overwhelming guilt. Like, I'll never know. I don't even know his name, right? But watching this visceral reaction from a senior military officer who was this woman's commanding officer, which I have never seen over a male soldier in my life, started getting me to think that until we changed the culture. And this is, let me just say right now, this is philosophy of Lynn. I still work for the Navy. This is not I can't say that this is the Navy's perspective. This is just Lynn. Lynn, who has taken 36 and a half years of experience and formulated this decision. But, men, until we break down men and make them immune, numb, whatever, to women being captured, abused, raped, whatever in front of them, women in combat are in a special place where that is going to be particularly hard.
You're going to get into a situation where the men are going to take unnecessary risks to protect the woman, and at the same time, if they're willing to take that risk, let's say I got to jump in front of Lynn because she's going to get killed, right? That also takes away, I'm not trusting you to have my back.
Well, and I'm glad you even said that.
Because that's the other side of it. Because underneath, they're thinking she can't really handle it, right? And she's not really up for the job.
And that happened to me. So when I was out on a mission in Afghanistan, we were going to go deliver some supplies to a Role 1 hospital. We had sterilized them at our hospital. We were going to go deliver them, and then we were going to go down to Marawise, which is a local hospital, and teach the nurses how to wash their hands. And as we were driving, we pulled up to the gate at the camp, and we noticed that the guards all there were Afghan National Army, and I was like, oh, these are supposed to be Ugandans and Slovakians. There's something amiss here. We're not going in. So they told us to go to the back gate, which we've never had to do before. So as we started driving around, we were going to abort at that point, and there was a white truck coming towards us with a tripod in the back and a gun on it. And so my guys, and I was in a convoy, I was the only female, so my guys pulled off and we got stuck in the sand. Like we were stuck in the, so we were sitting ducks. All of the men, all of them, corpsmen, and these were 20-year-old kids, got out and circled the vehicle and told me to stay inside. And they put a perimeter around me, so just to your point, and they wouldn't let me out. When the whole thing was said and done, now that...
They put themselves and the entire mission at risk.
For one female.
Yep.
So that truck ended up passing us, and because what we didn't know was there was a big overthrow of that camp that was getting ready to happen. So fortunately, we didn't get in. So we then got out of there and aborted our Marawise mission and went straight back. And then we got all the casualties from that guy who was trying to get in. They all breached the gate and the fence and got in, and then they shot up a bunch of people, and we got like 10 casualties from there. So, but to your point, when we got back and the dust all settled, I asked them all, I said, why did you do that? And I said, did you do it because I was a senior officer? And they were like, no, ma'am, we did it because none of us could live with the fact that if they took you away, we would never know what happened to you, but we would all know that they would have done horrible things to you. And for as long as there's been wars, you always hear about raping and pillaging, right?
Right.
And then when I was in Aruba, I think we're probably running out of time. When I was in Aruba this over Christmas, my family was on vacation in Aruba. We were sitting in the pool, and this little boy was hitting this little girl, and his dad came up, and these were little bitty kids, and he said, how many times do I have to tell you, you do not hit girls? And I looked at my daughter and I was like, oh, that was an absolute women, peace, and security thing right there. This was a man who didn't say don't hit your sister. He said you do not hit girls, right? And unless and until we change this culture, and that family wasn't changing the culture either, it was about protect your sister, protect this girl, don't hit her, right? And so I don't think we're ready. I don't think we're ready as a nation. And if Austin had continued to push for that, believe it or not, I would have pushed for the draft for women, because you know what? If we are a force multiplier and we are 50% of the population,
and that's where a lot of liberals draw the line.
Then why are we not signing up for the draft, right? If we're equals and we're force multipliers and we're not worried about that and we can serve in every role, then you can't have your cake and eat it too, right?
Right.
So again, philosophy of Lynn, not the Navy. None of this is the Navy.
No, I understand. It's what I was trying to get at earlier.
Yeah.
Like, there are a number of very valid reasons why women should be restricted from combat roles, from certain roles, right?
Women are capable of doing a lot of things.
I'm not saying they're not capable. I'm saying that there's a number of reasons that you can come up with that say, hey, this might not be the right place. At least not right now.
Hey, and guess what? I ended up becoming.
It doesn't mean that I don't trust Lynn to have my back.
But I ended up becoming a combatant in my my second to my last mission when I was out on the Comfort, where we were.
Oh, yes.
I was fighting the invisible enemy, and it was me and my team of medical people who, for the first time, were at the pointy end of the spear. We were the combatants. So now I can say I was a combat. Because we did fight the invisible enemy, right? It was everybody else who was supporting us while we were trying to get to the bottom of the nasty COVID virus. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, that went by much faster than I thought it was.
It should be part 2.
I don't know. I think I kind of threw you all off with the sex advisor.
That's a tough one to follow.
That's another title. So the next time you're on the show.
Nay, we're not using that one.
So many titles.
I know.
All right, folks. Anything else?
No,
Anything else?
not right now.
We're looking forward to what your next adventure is going to be.
Yeah. Sounds like I have some phone calls to make to some people around here and see what they're up to.
Sounds like it. All right, folks. As always, we're sponsored by the Wilson Hill Pistol Club. You can go to wilsonhillpistol.org to get our schedule. Our membership meeting is the first Wednesday of every month, which is next Wednesday at 7 p.m. right after the show, 1732 Lakeshore Road. And you can go to the website. As I mentioned earlier, you can catch the schedule for training. And the next training is the Fast Handgun, which is a fundamentals and safety training, which is this Saturday, 8 a.m. You can get more information online. And we'll see you next week.